kind of personhood for the actual autonomous agent itself, which would operate in the same way as, say, a company would. So in company law, you incorporate the company itself, but there are human actual agents within that incorporation. So somehow to incorporate developers to do that, but that's the kind of most out there solution. There's then other levels, kind of stratified levels that have been looked at to do with perhaps look at the level of education of the autonomous agent and relate that back to the developer itself, but that would need codifying. A lot of my work when I talk to people, they say you always come back to standards. I'm sorry, this is what we're doing, but it often comes back to trying to develop some form of standards that can work in a practical setting. The kind of lowest level, and the one that's more recognisable, is this approach that they might just extend compulsory insurance programs to both developers and the runners and the people who actually manage these AI systems in terms of driverless and autonomous vehicles. But another area that interacts with my kind of initial research focus is I'm trying to put some work into action that would look at issues of disability and autonomous cars and mobility in that sense. So from a rights-based perspective, to say, okay, if we have this fully automated system, there will then be people who can travel independently who otherwise would not have been able to do so. Now that depends upon legal measures that allow for the lack of no overriding human control. And we're not there yet. In California, there's one small law has allowed this to happen in a private area, but it's quite controversial whether or not that will be accepted. Anyway, cheers.
We don't know who's next. Who's next?
That's me. Hi, I'm Cosmin. I'm doing a PhD here at Lambda in sociology, writing up at this point, so trying to compress my 4 years worth of research into 3 minutes. I'm looking at post-automobility futures and how we can think about them by placing, instead of the car, place the bicycle as the nexus of mobilities in urban areas, in particular for short distance travels. For this purpose, I'm using Utopia, as Monica says, not as a destination, as a blueprint, but rather as a way to think about how to bring these futures, as a way to imagine these slow bicycle systems, as I call them. I'm using this Utopia's method in 3 ways. One is architecture, the other one is archaeology, and another one is ontology. And the architecture would mean that what I've been doing in some of my thesis was kind of actually imagining how a bicycle system, a slow bicycle system, could look like by extrapolating from the different niches of innovations around here, and kind of saying that it is actually and can actually be possible to think about a system of mobility around the bicycle in combination with walking and cycling, and public transportation, sorry. In the archaeological mode, what I'm doing actually is criticizing current utopias of automobility in the first place, and fast mobility more broadly, and fast cycling as well, as a way to see the future of post-automobility possible. And finally, I'm using Utopia as a method in an ontological way, in the sense that I'm thinking what are the individuals and societies which are required and would result as a consequence of having set up this future mobility systems which would revolve around the bicycle. I'm looking in particular through my empirical work at Senscapes, the Senscapes of cycling, and sociabilities. And I'm using, of course, mobile methods and my own cycling to understand how human flourishing can be understood differently by looking at the rhythms, the flows, the embodied nature of cycling.
Cousin?
Oh, sorry.
Okay. I think you need to go through quite a few slides.
How did you prepare?
Thank you.
Just before you start, I'll just work out how to make this go forward. Buttons.
Just down arrow.
That right arrow.
This.
Or down arrow, right or down, either one.
Hi, I'm Emma Rose, and my area is applied arts and health. So I'm just going to, I've worked with lots of different groups, marginalised groups in society. This is one project, and it was undertaken in the UK in the northwest of England with a charity supporting pre- and postnatal women refugees, all of whom were victims of rape and other various other crimes. There was a group of us. I worked with Dr. Amanda Bingley in health research and a group of PhD students. The underpinning idea behind it is that a lot of migrants, refugees and asylum seekers undergo a lot of mental stress. There's very high statistics to show PTSD is a major problem in this group, and part of our project was to in some way help the women in terms of their transition and restoration. So this was a pilot study. We're hopefully going to build it on and work with larger groups of refugees. So it was investigating the role of art in health and well-being, underpinned by the theory of therapeutic landscapes, which is too big a theory for me to go into here. But it provides us with a means about how we can conceptualise how places and spaces affect well-being. This was just one painting made by one of the women. They made paintings of places that they think of in terms of safe havens that they might have imagined on their journey to England, or on their travelling, or simply places that they wish to go to. They also thought about places that they associated with their homeland in terms of safety. For this woman, we know that the sea is a very dangerous place for refugees. The sea was the safest place she could think of, and that was her painting. So we were investigating how participatory arts interventions best support refugees in terms of their restoration, their mental restoration really, but also their transition in coming to a different place. And also how we could improve their lives in some way and contribute to refugee receiving communities in terms of how they might support therapeutic well-being. We were thinking about what landscapes can be reimagined, what types of landscape exist for people who move across national boundaries. And we were looking at the study design. And that was another painting. The last one, that was the woman looking out. She was only allowed to go outside for 10 minutes every day for a year. Thank you.
Hello, so my name is Mette Krag Furbo. I did my PhD in sociology here at Lancaster, and now I work as a postdoc in the Demand Center just across from here. So how do we know and understand the body? So in my PhD, I focused on how the body is known through certain data practices and how it becomes known as genetically susceptible. So in the thesis, I took movement as a conceptual and empirical focus, which means that as I explore genetic data on the move, as it moves outside the clinic and into and across online spaces, I also conceptualized genetic data as something which is in movement, which means that it's open, it's incomplete, and it's an epistemic thing that opens up questions, it not only answers them. This makes very much sense in the field that I studied that brings together genetics, social media and the market into new arrangements that is broadly known as consumer genomics and is part of sort of the wider area of digital health. So in addition to the mobility of saliva and mobility of genetic data, for example, the importance of logistics to saliva's ability to be on the move, as well as the mobility of genetic data across online spaces, for example through the uploading and downloading of files. I also look at how saliva translates into data and how data is made sense of and worked on, and in many of those instances as not yet complete and finished or defined. For example, in cases of programmers who develop software and databases that take part in shaping knowledge of genetic susceptibilities. I also looked at how individuals move through data, or as Bruno Latour would put it, learning to become affected. To explain this in a slightly different way, so when genetic data moves outside the clinic, individuals are often left on their own to interpret and make sense of the data, or they might seek advice online, for example using online forums. And in those instances, sense-making, we might characterize that as a form of experimentation, for which individuals will learn and come to know about genetic susceptibilities and their own bodies. So these different kinds of movement, as I broadly refer to them as, are very much entangled. So in my current research on energy demand, this is a quite different topic, but there are some similarities in terms of how we today move through data. So in the energy world, a smarter, more flexible energy system is being imagined and introduced. With the wider digitization of systems and infrastructures through smart metering. So this in part transforms how energy demand is being known, as well as it remonetizes electricity flows through their mobilization as data. Okay.
Hi, my name's Joe. I'm based both in the Sociology Department and the Demand Centre. This is a work in progress title for my PhD. I'm researching how practices of recreational running and swimming are changing and how materials might be understood to be implicated in that. Perhaps like one way of thinking about change in running and swimming is to focus sort of solely on whether it's done or not. And as expressed in some theories of sort of sports participation, which I caricature a bit, a somewhat straightforward relationship kind of is assumed where if the sort of right mindset or perhaps particular clothing is there, then action or the running, swimming will sort of straightforwardly happen. Among other things, this can sort of serve out to write out the experience of running and swimming, and other ways of thinking about kind of patterns of participation over perhaps someone's whole career or lifetime in running and swimming. So I've been interviewing some recreational runners and swimmers who typically either run and swim in indoor or outdoor environments to explore some alternative accounts. So these are a selection of snippets from about particular runs and swims. In the first, I think this runner talks of how when they're running, the moving body interacts with a particular surface, and this surface might be different because of the weather, because it's raining. And just to jump to this little picture down here, kind of Tim Wingold kind of conceptualizes a fluid relationship between all of these, which I think is quite helpful. He's mainly talking about outdoors, but for this sort of second vignette, it seems equally kind of pertinent for the sort of indoor experience of treadmill running. You've got the treadmill, maybe an inbuilt air conditioner, but then you've got the stable air conditions, and that's sort of also kind of, perhaps to make sense of this person's comments about how they feel about it, like it being a tropical island. Sort of a similar thing going on. In some ways, this last vignette could kind of take a similar line, but I think also relevant is the fact this body, this person talking about just the other day, over the weekend, they did 2 days of gardening, and that kind of history, if you will, was sort of brought into the swim. And so, with this person in particular, they told me about how they're sort of physically demanding work over a longer interview where I talked about their sort of whole background was kind of relevant for when they would swim. and when they work. Oh, okay. And I tried to capture that a little bit with some timelines they produced about their background. They talked me through those. Thank you.
We've got Stephanie is actually not here. She is. She sent us a video. She's a postdoc here at Lancaster. So I'm just going to try and see if that works. It should be 3 minutes or even less.
It's not on the screen for Canada, where I am currently, and the light is quickly fading. I am interested in crisis mobilities and the mobilities of crisis. Specifically, I'm interested in